Tim Brahim unveiling his new perfect loan process just for 2013. Welcome to the call, Tim.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Nice to be on the call, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Right on. Well, good to have you, my friend.
If there are some of you on this call who would tell me if I was coaching you that you didn't have time to get to all of your past clients during this refinance boom and you missed out on some opportunities, or you're currently still missing out on some opportunities. I hear that a lot. I just was too busy. That is a byproduct of a lack of a system, and it pains me, and I'm not making fun of anybody, believe me, it hurts me in my body when people tell me that, because I think of all of the opportunities that there are to have 2 years in one, so to speak. I mean, to literally maximize and leverage the opportunity and take advantage of it and be 1 year closer to being finished with having to work. The other group of people that I sometimes talk to are those that tell me that I have a big database of past customers, but I haven't called them because I don't really know that a lot of them would want to refi with me because their experience wasn't so good the last time around. And it just really hurts me when I hear that, because I'm like, gosh, I really wish that there was something that we could do about that. And there are scripts and things that I share with them. But that probably resonates with a few of you at least. And you're not alone. And what we want to do is fix that now. So let's start with the first leg of the relay. And what I really want everybody to really get their arms around is that in my mind, this is not a four-legged relay race, meaning there's not four people that run the race. In my mind, the optimal system is three. I'm going to break it down for you. The first person is the mortgage consultant, you. The second person is the transaction coordinator. The third person is the loan processor. And again, I will tell you what their disc should look like and their job description in a few minutes. But let's start with the first leg of the relay, you. Your job is to handle everything that is involved in the process until that person says yes. Yes, I want to move forward and do a loan with you. It is at that point in time that you have reached the first baton pass, and that you pass the baton to the transaction coordinator and you go back to the starting blocks and run another first leg. So what does that look like? That looks like taking in the initial phone call, doing the pre-qualification, thinking about where you're going to send the loan if you're a broker, or how you're going to structure the loan if you're sending it to an in-house investor. You're quoting them rates. You're thinking through how the loan will be packaged. You are absolutely 100% of the time doing a total cost analysis in the Edge software. I'll show you why in just a few minutes, what powerful things you can be doing if you are presenting educational numbers and writing to your clients as a part of your sales process. You're following up on them as a lead until which time they say yes to you. When they have said yes, your job is done. And when I say it's done, I mean it is done. The only time you re-enter the race is if that first leg of the relay needs to be run again on that person, meaning that the loan needs to be restructured because you didn't figure it out correctly the first time, or it needs to be resold because maybe the rates went up and your lock expired, but that's it. You're done. Anybody who's a great loan officer out there that's doing big numbers runs their system this way. They do not continue to participate in the loan process after the person says yes. Now, baton pass number one looks something like this in my book. Great, Dave. I'm really looking forward to working with you, and I know my team is as well. Let me share with you how my system and my process works. I realized a long time ago that being a loan originator really required me to exercise certain skills that were not my natural talent. And I kind of figured out at some point in the process that I needed to assemble a team of experts, people who are absolutely phenomenal at what they do. And what I do really well, Dave, is what you've experienced with me so far over the last couple of weeks. I know the financial markets. I know how to educate people in a very clear and articulate way. I know how to explain loan programs. I know what loans are out there. and I help the clients make a sound and important financial decision. What happens next really requires a lot of attention to detail. And it's not necessarily something that I'm best at, but I have somebody on my team who is phenomenal at it. She is my partner and my transaction coordinator. Her name is Elisa. Now, what I need to do is set a specific time for you to do the application with Elisa. She's also going to evaluate all of the documentation that she thinks the underwriter will want to see to get your loan approved in a very clean and expedient way. So when would be a convenient time for me to set up an appointment for you to call Elisa or for her to call you? She will be prompt. It'll take about 20 minutes, and she will get the ball rolling for you. Okay. Now, what I've just done is I have established credibility for Elisa. I've called her my partner, which is very important. I feel it's really critical that you call all your team members partners, not your assistant, not anything else, because nobody wants to talk to an assistant. They want to talk to people who are of importance. Now, Elisa, who was my transaction coordinator, was in a DISC profile perspective a high C, and this is really important for everyone to understand this. She was a high C, and her secondary high was her S, which means she was phenomenal naturally at attention to detail, very analytical by nature, and also patient. The exact person that you would want pre-underwriting a loan, strategizing and figuring out through the 1003 that was completed accurately and completely what documentation asked for to ensure that when that loan gets put into the sacred pipeline that we call processing, that it is clean and has a very high probability of closing. Because any processor will tell you, and you can go talk to any of your processors when you get off this call, the number one thing that screws everything up is loans that are opened that aren't going to go anywhere, aren't well thought through, and or are not packaged cleanly and correctly, and it creates a lot of work for them. And guess what? Most loan originators, because they're salespeople, don't possess that natural attention to detail to open up a clean, well-thought-through, pre-underwritten file, and that's where one of the major breakdowns occurs in the system. Now, if that client calls you back, and I forgot one thing in the script that it's critically important, is the last thing that I would say to Dave is, Dave, if you have any questions going forward about the application or any of the paperwork that we're asking you for, please contact Elisa. She will be proactively reaching out to you with her contact information to make sure you know how to reach her. And what I've just said to Dave in that case in a very polite way is, don't call me anymore. I'm done. The reason that I don't want to be bothered anymore is, number one, is it's not what I do. I need to go back and get more loans. That's what I do well, and that's the highest payoff activity that I could ever be doing. Secondly is, I don't want to muddy the waters. How many times has this happened to you? Client calls you up on a loan in process, or a realtor, either one. Client calls you up. Let's use this as an example. Hey, Tim, you guys are asking me for K-1s, and I talked to my CPA, and you know what, the K-1s, they don't prepare those. I don't get them from the hedge fund until September, and so I'm not going to get them for a few months. I don't know what to do, and I end up telling the client, don't worry about it, get me a letter from the CPA explaining this, and I think that'll be fine. And then I hang up the phone as the loan originator, and then my phone rings, or I get an email that distracts me, and I forget to tell the processor. And then the processor calls 2 days later and says, Dave, I was wondering when we're going to be getting your K-1s. Not a wow experience. And how many times does that happen every week? And how much inefficiencies are created? And how many less loans can your team process because this type of stuff is happening all the time? You see, that's the equivalent, getting back to the relay race, of me passing the baton to Elisa, and then I keep running down the back stretch for some odd reason. And she's running, she got the baton in her hand, and I say, hey, give that back to me real quick. And she passes it back to me, and I take it, and then I pass it back to her, and sooner or later, we're going to drop it. I can promise you. It'll happen. And it goes on for 40 days. So one of the great challenges that we all face is resisting the temptation to get re-involved. And that's a very interesting script. Here's how it goes. When the realtor calls you or the client calls you and asks you to get re-involved, here's your script. You know what? I don't know. But I know who does. I'll transfer you to Elisa in just a moment, and she will give you the answer. That's your script. And it was a tough one for me to deliver for a little while, first few weeks. And then what happened is they just stopped calling me. So Lisa then, you want that person to be a high C, because believe me, if you get a complete 1003 and you get a well pre-underwritten set of documentation gathered up, and her responsibility is to take the app, get it signed, get all the disclosures signed, work up the good faith, review it with the client, ask for all of the pre-qual information, gather it all up, make sure it's in, put it in the right stacking order, and then turn it into processing. If you do that, processors' jobs get a lot easier. And now they can do what they really should be doing in my book, which is focusing on dynamic customer service. So here's the script for the next baton pass. Dave, thanks so much for getting all your paperwork in. It's almost 100% complete. We're missing one pay stub, and I'm going to document that in the conversation log in our processing software for my teammate, Mary, who you're going to be working with from now until we complete this process, until we cross the finish line, if you will. I'll let her know that you're working on that pay stub. You're going to send it in on Friday when you get the next pay stub, and then we'll be complete. Mary will be reaching out proactively to introduce herself to you. She'll be sharing with you what the remainder of the process looks like. I've really enjoyed working with you. From this point forward, Mary's the person that you want to be speaking with. So Mary then, from that point forward, her function as the processor is to be a proactive communicator to both real estate agents, really blowing them away, to the client, and to everybody else involved in the transaction, including escrow, title, and the underwriter, and anybody else, funders, stock drawers, all that kind of stuff. And you may say, well, God, that's a lot of work. It's really not. Sounds like it. It's not as much as you think. Because, again, you'd be surprised as to how much easier their job becomes. When they get a file, they're the second set of eyes on it, and within 48 hours, they're working up a 1008 because it's stacked properly already. It's well thought through. They may catch one document that should have been asked for that maybe Elisa missed, and more than likely not, if this person is skilled and they're high C and they're really detail-oriented. And they're basically submitting loans very quickly when they get them and working files that have very few conditions and spending most of their time being proactive and communicating status to people way before they can ever even think to ask, and that's how you wow a customer. When the realtor's done with the transaction and they're like, gosh, you know, that was like painless. We didn't ever once have to call them and ask them for anything. They were so on top of it. And the client's like, geez, this is way better than the last 6 loans that I've done. So your processor, and you'll see all the details of every step that she does or he does in the PLP that you're going to download, but your processor is a high S. Very supportive, and their secondary high is their C. They're kind of just a slight reverse to the transaction coordinator. Transaction coordinator is a high C, secondary high S. Processor is a high S, secondary high C. Very patient, very nurturing, very supportive, can handle anybody that's freaked out with their hair on fire in the 11th hour, because that happens sometimes. That's the process. Now, when does the loan officer re-enter? Well, the loan officer re-enters, A, if, again, we need to resell the deal or restructure the deal for some reason because it wasn't done correctly the first time. That'll happen occasionally, but very infrequently. And also at certain strategic times in the process that I'm going to get to in a few minutes that are the money-making times, like when to ask for referrals and how to use the total cost analysis to get an introduction to a CPA, and how to make sure that you meet with the listing agent and the buyer's agent on every single transaction, which, gang, going forward is the name of the game. Every loan is the opportunity to develop new relationships and to wow customers and generate inbound referrals. And if you have a system designed to create that, you'll be very, very pleased with what the results are over the course of time. Here's some really big things that will throw off big dollars for you in relationships in the future. When you send out the total cost analysis on every loan, and this is in the first leg of the relay, and you're doing it, and you review it with the client, or before you review it with the client, you share the following script with them. I'm going to do a little bit of homework, a little bit of research on your behalf. I'm going to put together a comprehensive spreadsheet of 3 or 4 different loan options that take into consideration everything from principal prepayment strategies to your existing tax deductibility possibilities to how much your fees and points, all those things should be and what loan program is the right program for you. But before I do that, what I would like to get your permission is to spend about 5 minutes, and I promise it won't take longer than that, on the telephone with your accountant. May I have permission to call your CPA because I want to make sure that I'm putting in the right data into this analysis so I'm presenting the right numbers to you. You're very infrequently going to get any resistance from anybody when you ask them that question because they perceive it as being necessary and valuable if you present it that way. Now, guess what? You have an opportunity to call their CPA and introduce yourself to them. Hi, Dave. My name's Tim Brahim. We have a mutual client by the name of John Doe. John asked me to give you a call. I'm going to be handling his mortgage financing for him. I want to be able to make sure that I'm proactively working in conjunction with you to do a great job in servicing our mutual client. Just want to check in with you real quick on the tax bracket that I should be putting in this analysis and ask you if you need me to send a copy of it to you as well. Okay, now you've established a relationship. We'll get back to what to do with that relationship in just a minute. But it's an important first step because now you've walked into a situation where you've got a relationship with someone. Time to ask for a referral from your client is when reciprocity is happening in the process. Meaning, when you've delivered value to them is the time to ask for something from them. And people will naturally want to give back to you in return in that moment. And the time to do that is when you contact them to inform them and congratulate them on loan approval. Now, you'll notice in the process that the processor does that. The processor communicates to the client that the loan has been approved. This is one of the times where you re-enter the process, but not really. You're not re-entering the process as somebody who's actively involved in it. You're re-entering it as a sales individual who's trying to generate more referral business. So you call the client up. I'm sure that you heard from Mary. Your loan's approved. I personally wanted to take the time to give you a call and thank you for working with us. I know that we're not done yet. We're about halfway done with this race. We've got more to do, but this big hurdle was overcome, and I'm really pleased that we got loan approval for you. And I wanted to just mention to you that I work off of referrals. If you're happy with the service that we've provided to you thus far, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to think of anybody that might be in need of my services or find my services to be valuable. And if you have someone that you can refer me to, I'd be greatly appreciative. Now, doing it at that time not only is it a point of power when you're delivering value, but also on a subconscious level, the borrower is thinking, I kind of need to take care of them because we're not done. And think of it, most of us, if we're asking for referrals at all, ask for referrals either at the beginning or when we're done. And at the beginning, we don't have any real street cred with them because we haven't done anything of real significance for them. At the end, and think of how crazy this is. I used to do this. At the end, we're asking for referrals when they've got their mind on a million things, like lining up moving vans and getting new electricity, bills established and accounts established and all this kind of stuff. The time to do it is at the time of loan approval. So I wanted to add that in. Next, when the loan is opened, when the application comes back in to the transaction coordinator is the next signpost in the process, and this is your opportunity to meet both real estate agents. Now, my personal feeling is that if you have an executive assistant or your transaction coordinator should be making this call rather than you, but it's not, I'd rather have you make the call than not have anyone make it at all. But I think that it comes off a little bit cleaner if somebody else is making this call, and it would go something like this. They get the application in, that's their cue. They call both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. They introduce themselves, and they say, I'm calling on behalf of Tim Brahim, who's the executive loan originator that's handling this transaction. I'm calling you to give you a couple of times for Tim to come by and meet with you for 15 minutes at your office. He's available on Monday at 9 a.m. and then again on Tuesday from 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Please give me a time that he can come by. What he wants to do is he wants to sit with you. He wants to share with you how this process is going to work to make sure that we are working cohesively together as a team to create the best possible experience for our mutual client and to ensure that we generate future referrals as a result of this transaction. Okay? So we're giving them a reason as to why we're going to meet and a reason that they would be interested in. It's a simple yes or no answer. You may get a few realtors who say, you know what, I just don't have time. And you know what, you're no worse for the wears. But I will tell you that you'll find more often than not, if handled that way, they will yield a time for 15 minutes. You give them 2 specific times. You don't ask, would you like to meet with Tim? You simply say, here are 2 times, which one works best for you? Now, when you go to meet with them, the script looks like this. You know, Bob, we're going to be working together over the next 30 days. And one of the things that's really important for me is to make sure that I understand how to sell you. I realize that you're representing the buyer and I'm representing the buyer. And there are things that you would like to say about yourself to hopefully generate future referrals for your business that might not be able to be said without you sounding as if you're arrogant or patting yourself on the back, or it just may be uncomfortable for you. So it's important for me because in every interaction that I have with the borrower, I want to remind them of how lucky they are to be working with you. And I want to be able to make sure that I know your value proposition so I can articulate it in a very impactful way to them. So they're thinking about future business with you and sending other friends and family members of theirs to you. So share with me how to sell yourself. I promise you that will never be a difficult conversation if you deliver that. The realtor will love you, and you will have a big-time foot in the door in establishing future business with them, because at that point in time, you have an opportunity to share with them, and you can just simply say, now, do you mind if I ask that you do the same for me? So when you're talking to our mutual client, I'd like you to share the following things with them about me and my services and how I work, because I want to make sure that we're really working as a team here to think of our future in this business. You want to always be thinking about being proactive as a part of your process and providing, as an example, I'll give you one very specific example of something that I found to be incredibly effective. When a client calls me up for the first time, yes, I was referred to you by my real estate agent, Dave Savage, and he said that I should give you a call and get pre-approved. Great. Go through the process. As soon as I get off that call, the very first thing that I'm doing is generating a pre-approval letter and sending it over to Dave. Dave doesn't even know that I've talked to the client yet. And Dave's got a pre-approval letter sitting in his email saying, Dave, thank you so much for referring Mr. and Mrs. Jones to me. I had a very beautiful conversation with them. I understand their circumstances very clearly. Please find enclosed a pre-approval letter on them for the maximum amount that they will qualify for. I figured that this would be helpful for you to hold in your file. So when you're out looking at property with them, if you decide to write an offer and you don't want to have to try to track me down, you have it handy for you. I can't tell you how many times my realtors that I've worked with for years would say to me, you know, that one little thing that you do means so much to me, because every time I have to work with a loan officer other than you, and I'm going to try to write an offer on a Saturday, and I can't get a hold of them, and I'm waiting for 2 hours, it drives me crazy. And I never have to worry about that when I work with you. It's all these little things, gang, that create the experience that has them addicted to working with you. Because every time they work with somebody else, they're reminded of you, because nobody else measures up. So I'll end it on that. I'm happy to take questions. And, you know, there will be questions, I'm sure, Dave, that will come from people going through the Perfect Loan process of my website. If anybody has those questions, you can just shoot me an email, and happy to answer them for you. My email address is tbrahim, TBRAHEEM @gmail.com.
So
fire away, Dave.
Yeah, so if you got nothing else from this call, I hope you got the concept that service isn't doing what's expected, it's going beyond. And so many of you mortgage professionals on this call right now, when you think where the most important time it is to wow people, you're doing things like this. This is what wow looks like for many of you. You know, by the way, this is the most, this right here, the yellow pad, that's the most common way that loan officers are having that conversation. And again, all you Mortgage Coach members, you have it. You have access to it, although you're not necessarily doing it with each and every client, each and every time. We don't make more money whether you do or don't. You do. It's important that you do it each time, because when you deliver an edge report like this, this is the type of thing that a client says to themselves. Or sometimes they put it in an email. All I can say is, wow, great presentation. Now I understand. I mean, what more, again, what more can you ask? Because let's face it, you can't control every step of the process, but you can control how wowed that client is when you hand them off to your transaction coordinator. I hope that you don't just go and download Tim's 10-page, 71-question action item document. I hope you'll study it. I hope you'll implement it. It doesn't happen overnight. This is not a one-week project. This might take you the whole year to really nail this, but if you do it, this could be career-changing for you. And I hope that you will make this call career-changing and really go to the next level. Take care, everybody. We will see you at future coaching calls, and have a great week. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.